welcome to Educated Kids learning session. We have been discussing about the social skill development series, and in this series we talk about various aspects of problem behavior among children. And in this series, the third component of problem behavior we discussed is all about the antisocial and aggressiveness behavior of the child. Under this, we'll be discussing the third component, and this component deals with the revenge taking behavior of the child. It is quite common that children behave like they want to hurt others, they want to bring pain to others, and when such kind of behavior surfaces, then in the preschool years it is very important to address them. If it is not addressed, as we know, that it will lead to a kind of regular behavior pattern in the child, and once it becomes a regular behavioral pattern, then that will be labeled as a problem behavior of the child, and child will be living in that, and that will create a lot of problem in the social life in the future. So it is therefore very, very important in the preschool years that we must understand if a child exhibits such kind of revenge-seeking behavior against others. So it's important to understand as teachers or as parents how to identify that a child is showing that revenge-seeking behavior. Basically, it is said that when the child tries to bring pain in others, that means child himself or herself is in a lot of pain. Therefore, it is very, very important to ensure for parents and teacher that the child is happy, the child gets right attention at home or at school, so that the pain inside the child is not at all there. Therefore, the first and foremost symptom that we must notice in child is that when the child feels that she or he doesn't matter to anyone. So when the attention for that child is not there, basically from the people who matters to the child, it is parents or very close teachers in the preschools, if they ignore some of the basic behavior of the child, or if the child is saying something and we ignore them, then child feels that he or she doesn't matter to anyone. So if such kind of symptom happens, then the revenge taking behavior surface automatically. So we have to keep an eye on such kind of situation when we feel that our children are going in that kind of direction. Second thing we must keep an eye on is that often child says hurtful things to very close people like parents and the teachers who are in very close contact with the child, and child often says, "You do not love me." So this is also one kind of attention deficit towards the child. If the child feels that necessary attention is not given to him or her, then such kind of reaction comes from the child. So when the child often says, "You are no more loving me, you are hurting me," such kind of things, then that may lead to revenge taking behavior. So this is very important. When the child talks such kind of sentence or such kind of informations, then we must be in a position to take necessary action against that. Third thing we must give attention to is that the child causes unprovoked injury to younger siblings. When child feels that necessary attention is not given to that particular child, then that must be happening because of somebody else. So in families, it happens very, very commonly that when a new child is born and maximum attention is diverted towards the newborn child, then the elder ones become little bit of isolated, they become little bit of silence, and in this silence they go into a different cell by thinking that they are no more required in this family. Therefore there is a revenge taking attitude or revenge taking behavior surfaces in the child. So when such kind of things happen, then the child tries to harm to the younger sibling for whom such kind of situation has happened. So when you feel that a particular child is creating little bit of problem to the younger sibling, then we must be in that understanding that child is getting into that revenge taking behavior. This is very, very important, and it's very common across different families that our research has shown such kind of situation happens when a newborn child comes to the family. Then fourth one is that the child shows no interest in gifts given by parents or relatives. Because the child goes into a different self and child feels that he or she is not very important in the surrounding. Therefore, the gift doesn't matter at that point of time. So this is a very simple symptom that when we give any gift, normally the child shows happiness, child becomes very happy by receiving any kind of gift. And when the child is not at all happy by receiving the gift, then we must take into account that the child is getting into the revenge taking behavioral pattern. So these are the 4 basic symptoms. We must keep it in mind. And when our child is having such kind of symptoms, then we must be in a situation to take some action in order to avoid that our child is getting into such kind of behavioral pattern. Then we must go to a situation how to manage if a child is getting into revenge taking behavior. And sometimes when the child is getting into that revenge taking behavior, child becomes more aggressive. When child becomes more aggressive, then we must handle the child with utmost care. So we have few strategies that we must adopt in order to manage such kind of situation. Number 1 is very important. We must practice empathy. Empathy not only helps the child come out of such kind of revenge taking behavioral pattern, but also it helps the child to become more empathetic by himself or herself. So we must spend quality time with the child quite cheerfully. Every child loves to play. So when we spend time, it's not like that we'll be having a kind of talk with the child, but we must create some kind of activities where we can connect quite well with the child, so that inclusiveness along with the child is very, very important, so that child doesn't feel that he or she is out of the whole schema of things, either in family or in society or in school environment. Whatever may be the environment we are talking of, we must ensure that child feels as a part of that environment. The inclusiveness is very, very important to keep it in mind. The next strategy, what we can do is that ensure positive reinforcement. When we want to do something, there are 2 ways to get things done. One is that give punishment to the child for doing the wrong thing or for behaving such. Second option is that doing a positive reinforcement, saying that if you do not do that, we'll just give you some award. So maximum time, what we do as the teachers or parents, we try to become little bit of negative. We become little bit of problematic by ourselves by thinking some kind of punishment for the child. But punishment in that particular period of time will create further damage rather than doing further good. So stay calm, have some kind of positive reinforcement, whatever may be the situation. Just we must keep it in mind that we will never punish the child if such kind of behavior surfaces in the child. Third one is that, as I said, it is directly related to that. So punishment is not the solution. So when any kind of such problematic behavior happens, first and foremost thing is that keep it out of the mind that will punish our child. So don't even let the child feel that we are going to punish him or her. So the moment child feels that I'm going to get punished because of such, then child will further become more rigid. Child will again do such kind of things again and again because there is a negative reinforcement is happening to the child in such kind of situation. So punishment should be out of the possible solutions in that situation. Then next one is that introduced a highly engaging activity. When I am talking about engaging activity, that the amount of activities to be done by the child is more than 50%, while the teacher or parents, they must have around less than 50% of participation in that particular activity. So most of the time what happens in preschool environment, when we try to build skills in our child, it becomes a one-way traffic. Either parents or teachers, they keep on talking to the child and child just becoming a kind of spectator or listening all these things. In fact, when we keep on telling something to our child, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever it may be in terms of changing the behavioral pattern in the child unless the child himself or herself does that particular activity. So in this situation, we at Eduvated Kids have been advocating that all the activities should be skill-based activities. They are functional activities. So if it is not functional activities, that means if any activities is not lead to some kind of outcome, then it becomes simply a normal activity. So we must keep it in mind that teachers and parents, whether the activities we are designing for our child is a functional activity or not. If it is not functional activity, then we have to go back, see that how to define a functional activity, and based on that, once it becomes a functional activity, then we know how to engage our children in such kind of activities. So these are very basic strategies which can easily be done at preschool environment or sometimes at home environment. So easily we can manage such situation to prevent our children get into such kind of revenge-taking behavior. So now, as we have already been telling, and it is also part of the Eduvated curriculum, that we must be having a checklist to be filled to check if the child is having right behavior. So for that matter, we will be having a revenge-taking behavior checklist. So what we need to do is that we'll be having some kind of checklist, and such checklist is a part of the whole documentation process of Eduvated curriculum. So if these 4 things happen to the child while we do this checklist, If the child feels she or he is not worth for others, the child is hurtful and says things accordingly like, you do not love me, I am not useful for anyone. So such kind of things we have to give, we have to check it, and we have to put it into the documentation. Or the child doesn't appreciate gifts, a child hurts younger siblings. If such four things are present while we do this checking or doing this checklist for a particular child, then that helps us to take necessary strategies, what we have already discussed. So if such kind of things are not happening, we give a score of 0. If rarely, meaning once in 1 month, once in 2 months, such kind of thing happens, then that's we should not be much bother about. And at that point of time, we may give a score of 1. If sometimes it happens, then we give a score of 2. And very often on a daily basis, if such kind of thing happens, then we give a score of 3, so that we know at this point of time it is very, very essential to take some kind of corrective action in order to make sure the child exhibits right behavior and such negative or problematic behavior are not becoming a habitual behavior for the child. So that way it's quite important to make sure that our child is rightly engaged and rightly skilled in the preschool years. So with this, we are closing the third component, and in our next session, we'll go to the fourth component of antisocial and aggressive behavior, which deals with when the child calls people names. So this is also quite interesting to understand, and such kind of behavior becomes actually habitual in future, so we need to address them appropriately. So we'll just take this subject in our next session, and up to then, thank you so much for your attention, and believing that Educated Kids will provide a lot of support system to you in your endeavor of building skill in the child. So thank you so much, and we'll see you in our next session.